It's funny how life can choke you, literally, before offering you the sweetest kind of rescue. One night I was sprawled on the cold tiles of a diner bathroom, convinced my stomach was trying to murder me, and the next I was staring into the kindest pair of eyes I had ever seen that belonged to a man who smelled faintly of butter and rosemary. His name was Aaron. He was the chef who carried me out like I weighed nothing, his strong arms steady despite my mess of sweat and nausea. I told myself it was just gratitude that kept me awake that night, but deep down, even through the cramps and dizziness, I knew better. Something in the way he looked at me, like I wasn't a burden, like I mattered, settled into my chest and refused to leave. New York doesn't slow down for anyone. It's a city that eats you alive if you're not fast enough. But in Aaron's little diner tucked between a laundromat and a liquor store, the world seemed to exhale. The lights were dimmer, the booths cracked with stories, and the air carried the scent of garlic bread and late-night confessions. I started showing up there more often, at first because I owed him thanks, and later because I couldn't stop myself. He was always there, behind the counter, sleeves rolled high, a smudge of flour on his cheek, humming softly to a radio no one else could hear. Watching him cook was like watching someone pray intent, reverent, and full of something holy. And damn it, I wanted to be part of that prayer. But here's the cruel part about desire. It doesn't come quietly. It drags along fear, shame, and every old wound you thought you buried. Aaron was kind, sure, but he was also guarded, always slipping behind jokes when I tried to get too close. And me? I was a mess of scars I didn't want anyone tracing. Still, every time our eyes locked, every time his hand brushed mine when he set down a plate, I felt the ground tilt. One night, after too many beers at the corner bar, I stumbled back into the diner at closing time. He should have told me to leave, but instead he made me coffee. We sat in silence, steam curling between us, and I swear the air was so heavy with what we weren't saying that it could have crushed us both. My hand twitched toward his, reckless, stupid, desperate. He didn't pull away. "Why do you keep coming back here?" he asked, voice low, like he was afraid of the answer. I wanted to tell him the truth, that his laugh had lodged itself in my chest, that I dreamed about his hands, the same hands that had once steadied me when I couldn't stand. But instead I said, "Because the food's good." He smiled, but his eyes told me he didn't believe a damn word. The thing about falling for someone like Aaron is that it doesn't feel like falling, it feels like drowning. Slow, terrifying, and inevitable. I'd wake up thinking about him, go to work with his voice echoing in my head, come home and wonder if he ever thought of me. Every little kindness from him felt like a confession, and every distance he put between us felt like a wound. Then came the night that changed everything. It was raining, the kind of storm that makes the city feel feral, streets slick and howling with sirens. I'd had a fight with my sister. My phone buzzed with texts I didn't want to read, and all I could think of was him. So I ran through the storm, soaked and breathless, until I found myself banging on the diner's locked glass door. Aaron opened it, eyes wide with concern. I must have looked pathetic, dripping all over his clean floor, shaking like a leaf. Without a word, he grabbed a towel and pulled me inside. He didn't ask why I was there. He didn't make me explain. He just wrapped the towel around my shoulders and looked at me like I wasn't broken. "Stay," he said softly. Just that one word, but it cracked me open. And so I stayed. We sat in the kitchen, the storm raging outside, and for the first time I let myself look at him without flinching. His jaw was sharp but softened by the glow of the overhead light, his hair damp with sweat from the ovens, his hands resting on the counter like they were meant to hold something precious. I wanted to kiss him. God, I wanted it so badly my chest hurt. But fear is a cruel master. It whispered every rejection I'd ever heard, every look of disgust, every warning that love like ours could burn us alive. My throat closed around the words, but my body betrayed me. My hand reached for his. This time I didn't pull back. He froze. The silence stretched, unbearable. Then, slowly, he turned his palm up and threaded his fingers through mine. His grip was warm, steady, and in that instant, the storm outside was nothing compared to the one inside me. I laughed, sharp and broken, because sometimes joy feels too big to hold. He just shook his head, smiling in that way that made me want to believe in miracles. "Your trouble," he murmured. "Yeah," I whispered back. "But maybe I'm your kind of trouble." For the first time in years, I felt safe. Not because the world had changed, but because sitting there, hand in hand with him, I finally believed it could. Aaron's hand lingered in mine that night, but life has a cruel way of reminding you that even miracles come with complications. The weeks after our storm-soaked confession were a strange kind of heaven. I'd slip into the diner after work and sit at the counter like it was my church pew, waiting for him to come out from the kitchen. He always did, wiping his hands on a rag, rolling his eyes when I teased him, but staying. Always staying. Sometimes he'd push a plate toward me, sometimes just a cup of coffee. Either way, those little offerings felt like love letters written in the language of food and silence. But for every moment of sweetness, there was hesitation too. He never leaned too close, never crossed the line we both knew was there. He let me sit in his presence, but he didn't let me all the way in. And it gnawed at me, the way fear does when you start to wonder if you're the only one dreaming. One night, when the diner was almost empty, I caught him staring at me, his face unreadable, his hands flexing like he was working up the courage to do something reckless. My chest tightened. I thought maybe this was a kiss, the break in the dam, the thing I'd been starving for. But then a group of rowdy customers pushed through the door, and just like that, the moment was gone. He slipped back into the kitchen without a word, leaving me hollow. The next day, I didn't go to the diner. For the first time since that night in the storm, I stayed away. I told myself I was busy, that I didn't need him. But the truth? I was terrified. Terrified that I wanted more than he'd ever be willing to give. A week passed, then another. I drowned myself in work, in cheap beer, in anything that would keep me from thinking about the way his hands felt around mine. But the harder I tried to forget, the louder the memory screamed. Finally, one night I caved. I found myself back at the diner door, heart in my throat, expecting him to push me away. Instead, he looked up, and the relief in his eyes nearly broke me. "Where the hell have you been?" he asked, voice rough. I laughed, sharp and defensive. "I could ask you the same." His jaw clenched. For a moment, I thought he might turn away. But then he dropped the rag he'd been holding and walked around the counter. He stood so close I could feel the heat radiating off him. His hands hovered at his sides, like he was fighting every instinct he had. "I'm not good at this," he admitted, voice low. "I don't let people in. I don't know how to do it without screwing everything up." And just like that, the wall between us cracked. "You saved me," I said, softer than I meant to. "Not just that night. Every night since. You don't have to be perfect, Aaron. You just have to let me stay." For a long beat, he didn't move. Then, finally, he reached for me, his hands trembling as they cupped my face. And then he kissed me. It wasn't soft. It wasn't tentative. It was messy and desperate and tasted like every damn thing we'd been holding back. My knees nearly gave out, but his arms held me steady, just like they had the night he carried me out of the bathroom. We didn't stop. Not that night, not the nights after. The diner became more than a place for late-night coffee and garlic bread. It became ours. A sanctuary. The world outside still spun fast and cruel. But in that kitchen, in that booth, on those cracked floors, we found a rhythm that was ours alone. Of course, life didn't make it easy. People whispered. Some customers looked at us differently. I could see the tension in Aaron's shoulders when certain regulars came in. The way his smile faltered when someone's eyes lingered too long. Fear was always there, coiled between us. But so was love. And love, stubborn and relentless, kept winning. There were fights, of course. Nights when my own insecurities clawed at me, when I pushed him away before he could do the same. Nights when his silence felt like a wall I couldn't scale. But every time, without fail, we found our way back. Sometimes with tears, sometimes with laughter, always with hands reaching across the distance. Months passed. Seasons shifted. The diner's neon sign flickered more often, but inside, the light between us only grew brighter. One late summer evening, When the city air was thick with heat, I walked into the kitchen to find him rolling dough, flour dusting his forearms. He looked up, and without thinking, I said, "I could spend forever here." He blinked, caught off guard. "Here? In this sweaty kitchen?" I grinned. "Here. With you." For once, he didn't deflect. He didn't joke. He just reached for my hand, pressing my palm flat against his chest. His heart hammered beneath my touch. "Then stay," he whispered, and so I did. I stayed through the long nights, the quiet mornings, the chaos and the calm. I stayed when the diner filled with laughter and when it sat empty except for the two of us. I stayed because leaving had never really been an option. Aaron wasn't just the chef who saved me from food poisoning. He was the man who saved me from myself. From the loneliness I'd worn like a second skin. From the fear that love was something I wasn't built to hold. Now, when I dream of his hands, it isn't with longing or ache. It's with gratitude, because those hands don't just cook or steady me when I stumble. They build, they hold, they love. And if you told me back on that cold bathroom floor that I'd one day find a home in the arms of the man who carried me out, I'd have laughed in your face. But here I am. Here we are. It turns out the sweetest kind of rescue doesn't end when the storm passes. Sometimes it lasts a lifetime. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.